Well, let me turn to William Lee. He's the chief economist at the Milken Institute. Bill, 6% growth for the global economy, considered what we were all going through just a year ago, pretty good number.
Yeah, all that optimism, though, rests on a very small foundation. U.S. and China, those are the two economies that are doing quite well and likely to come out of the downturn with all guns blazing. Unfortunately, the rest of the world is not as fortunate, and the key to the revival of the U.S. economy and China is the availability of vaccines and the control of the virus. One of the things that we have seen in the IMF report is that most of the emerging market economies, most of the population of the world, including Western Europe, has very little prospect of even seeing half its population vaccinated by the end of the year. And that's not only because of logistics and distribution, but also a lot of people are just refusing to take the vaccines.
So when the IMF warned the economic recovery is expected to be uneven and there are big hurdles ahead, that's what they were talking about.
That's absolutely key, and in fact, the unevenness of the distribution of the upturn is something that all of us economists are worried about, because you cannot have just one or two countries do well and the rest of the global economy not do anything, because that would serve as a drag on the two major economies. And I think one of the things that all policymakers are trying to do is to make sure that we have a revival in the other economies, the Western Europe as well as Asia and Africa. And the key to doing that is getting people vaccinated.
Let me move on to China, the world's second largest economy. Record 8.4% growth, Bill, expected this year, 5.6% next year, also better than expected. But there's also a downside to that, or is there?
Well, one of the things that the Chinese authorities are concerned with is, with all that growth, there's a tremendous influx of capital coming into the Chinese financial markets. And while the Chinese financial markets have developed quite a bit in the last several years, they're just not strong enough to withstand that kind of huge capital inflow. So what the authorities are trying to do is to limit that inflow, because they don't want to overwhelm the stock market, create asset market bubbles, or even worse, overwhelm the property markets and create even more of a bubble there that they've been trying to stamp out for almost a decade now.
And a faster in the recovery in the United States could also have a downside, because it could mean higher interest rates.
Well, actually, that one I would disagree with, because the fear of higher interest rates is associated with higher inflation. And I'm one of the many people who believe that the burst of inflation we're going to see is because of supply chain bottlenecks. When everybody wants to buy the same thing at the same time, you're going to see higher prices. So we're going to see higher prices until the supply chains start to normalize. And that's probably going to be in about 6 months to a year. So we're going to see a pop in prices. But after about a year or so, we're going to see the disinflationary forces come back to roost. Don't forget, the world has been under the shadow of disinflationary forces coming in from trade with China that's supplying low-cost goods, but also the productivity gains and from the investment in software and the rearrangement of service-side businesses in a way that makes them more efficient. So downside pressures are going to reemerge, and that will limit the rise in inflation as well as interest rates.
And Bill, a big part of the economic growth that we're already seeing here in the United States, how much of that can be credited to the Biden administration's nearly $2 trillion relief or rescue package, if you will?
If I were a Democrat, I'd say all of it. But as a professional economist that is not partisan, I would say some of it, but not all of it, because the key to the revival has been easing up the lockdowns. If you lock down an economy, guess what? You have a recession. When you open up an economy and let people go back and doing their thing and doing their work, you have a huge revival. And now that the vaccines in the U.S. are being better distributed, we're seeing much more revivals in Texas, and even California is coming back online. So we're going to expect in the second half of the year to see a very strong revival, mainly because people are allowed to go back and do the thing that they're supposed to be doing.
William Lee, as always, we appreciate it.